Are you going to be alone at Thanksgiving? Well, it's that time of year that's typically filled with food and fun and cheer and possibly loneliness and anxiety. I'm going to offer some tips for handling a Thanksgiving alone and actually enjoying yourself. Now, as a pilot wife, I know because I've been there. And after 36 years as a co captain to my pilot, I've dealt with it all for the holidays and especially Thanksgiving. And I've managed to deal with it successfully most of the time. And you can too. So grab the Pilot Wife checklist at pilotwifechecklist.com, buckle up, and let's go. And make sure you check out my entire Thanksgiving holiday series playlist where I'm going to cover my menu, all the food, the preparation, the planning ahead to avoid overwhelm, how to start a month out and go all the way through until Thanksgiving Day with ease and stress-free. We'll talk about shopping, decorating, and some healthy ingredient swaps and more. Now, pilot wives and aviation partners and others, I know this can be a lonely time of year as we move into the holiday stretch, but I'm here to help you really deal with some of those things and pre-plan and think ahead of time as to how you might handle this. Now, one benefit that we have is that, especially for commercial airline pilots, I realize there are others of you who listen who aren't in the commercial aviation space, and I totally get that. But if you do have access, perhaps you can accompany your pilot on his or her trip and spend the time together. A lot of times, not as much anymore as it used to be. It used to be Thanksgiving Day was a great day to travel. It wasn't as full, but that's all changed dramatically. But you just never know. You might be able to squeeze into a space available seat and accompany your pilot to his or her destination and celebrate the holiday there. After all, really, it's the reason for the season. And even though it's Thanksgiving, we're talking about specifically, which typically revolves around food, it's the community and the love and the gratitude and all of that we share that makes everything so different. And you might even check around at the airport because a lot of times, I know back in my day, we had, crew boards and bulletin boards and people would put stuff out there what was going on. And as I mentioned and will mention, don't be afraid to be the party starter, the one that starts all the activities. So the first step in making a Thanksgiving that you're going to be spending alone much more palatable, pun intended, is to plan ahead. Now, since I come from the airline industry and worked in aviation before I met and married an airline pilot, I already knew about working the holidays. I had already worked a number of holidays myself, everything from Thanksgiving to Easter to Christmas, you name it, I've worked holidays. So I was already pretty much prepared for that part of it, for being maybe away from my family during dinner, or opening presents on Christmas morning, some of that type stuff. But this can be a little bit different. What I'm specifically addressing here is if you are pretty much all alone. I would get off work and have family, friends, and different people to come home to celebrate with. And that's part of what we're going to cover here. So you may already be in a situation like this. If you've ever done shift work yourself, or you have family members, your spouse, your partner, anyone who works outside the traditional 8 to 5 corporate life with traditional holidays off, it can be quite different. So if you're alone for today only, due to a spouse working or something like that, it can be a little different, but it can also be even more triggering for being alone for an extended time during this entire holiday period. So let's just go through some simple tips that you can do to make the most of Thanksgiving by yourself. First and foremost, take an inventory of your own needs. How do you get your needs met? What do you enjoy most about the holidays? Do you have emotional needs? Do you have community, family, friends, having people around you, those type of needs? And what are your resources? Do you have the ability to travel if need be? Do you have the ability to go out to eat? Think of monetary resources as well. The next step is to really begin to handle your emotions ahead of time. Now, I know that sounds a little crazy, but you think about it when we know something's coming up that we're not looking forward to, which could be Thanksgiving, a holiday by ourselves, not all the traditional family and feasting and all that goes along with that, we can end up in that dread cycle for days, weeks, even a month before the actual holiday hits. So I want to encourage you to handle those emotions ahead of time. What are your memories of the holidays? What matters to you? And then an important thing to note is, are those memories all true? Now, it's kind of funny. Sometimes we can romanticize what a holiday looks like. We see a Hallmark movie, or we see the Hallmark greeting card or commercials, different things like that. And we can begin to romanticize what it can be like, or what it should be like, to be surrounded with family and friends during the holidays. And the reason I ask if those memories are true is because sometimes, if we really stop and think back, we think to ourselves, I don't even really like those people, some of our family members. I don't really enjoy the way we spend Thanksgiving. There's too much drama. Like, there's Uncle Harry, who just always is so annoying, or Betty Sue, who drinks too much and then she gets sloppy and, creates drama for the rest of the family. So as you're recalling your memories, make sure you take time to recall those memories that are not so pleasant as well. And then a final thought with that, handling your emotions ahead of time, is to think for yourself, how will I step into an image that supports where I am right now and helps me cope and literally sail through those holidays, through that one day, especially with joy and gratitude, and especially gratitude since we're thinking about Thanksgiving specifically. Just pause, and while you're taking that inventory, be sure to take note of everything that's great in your life. That will uplift you. It's really hard to be super down when you get into that place of gratitude, whether it's a home that you love, a roof over your head, maybe a pet, family that you're going to see next week, possibly after the holiday, or for the Christmas holidays, or something else that you have planned. Really, in taking stock of your inventory, it's good to handle those emotions ahead of time, but also think about all the great things that you have. Now, I mentioned how we can often project fear and anxiety onto something that we know is upcoming. 2 Christmases ago was the first time that my husband and I ever spent a Christmas without one or both of our children with us. My son's in the Marine Corps, so he's not been home for Christmas for a number of years. My daughter, however, had made it home for 28 of her Christmases on Earth. And this particular year, she was spending it over in London with a group of friends there. And I knew it ahead of time. And at first I really did. I got down in the dumps and I felt sorry for myself, and, just really weighed in on all of that. Now, just a side note, I had spent plenty of Thanksgivings and Christmases without my airline pilot husband. That's another story. But this was really the first time without one of my children home as well. And, as you have children, and if you do have children, you'll know what I mean, in that often the holidays become completely wrapped up in family and those kids and making sure their experience. The interesting thing is, once I really dealt with my emotions ahead of time, I stopped and I thought, you know what? It's one day. It's one day, and I'm going to wake up and the sun's going to be shining, and I'm going to still have a great dinner with friends and family and do all the things. It's just that one particular person is going to be missing from that. I'm still going to do FaceTime with her. And when the day is gone, I will have breezed through that first in my life, that first holiday without a child of mine at home, and I'll be fine. And guess what? I was perfectly fine. Now, another thing you might want to do is Friendsgiving. That's nothing new. We've all heard about that before. Most of us have. Here's the thing. Often Friendsgiving is something that we do without our family. We do it with our group of friends, and we often do it on a day that's different than Thanksgiving. But here's the thing. If you're alone on Thanksgiving, it doesn't have to be a different day. You can actually do Friendsgiving on Thanksgiving Day. Now, I always say I was the home of the misfit toys from the airline industry. We had a habit of opening up our home to anybody who was going to be alone for the holidays. And I did this even when I was flying solo. and was going to be alone myself, my husband wasn't going to be home for that holiday, I would reach out to other people from the airline, other people in my neighborhood, other people that I knew. When we relocated from Nashville to Phoenix, I lived in a 13 home cul-de-sac and nobody was from Phoenix. Everybody was a misfit toy, a transplant from somewhere else. And the very first time I reached out to my entire cul-de-sac of 13 people, 7 people responded and showed up for a potluck. Now that was on Christmas Day, but it's no different with Thanksgiving. It's important to note that if you're going to be alone for the holiday, chances are really good that other people who you know and are close to are going to be alone too. The challenge is most of us suffer in silence, right? We feel shame around it, or we feel sadness, or we feel something we don't want to intrude. And it holds us back from reaching out to other people and saying, hey, what are you doing for the holidays? And that leads me to my next tip, which is reach out and invite yourself. Reach out and invite yourself. Now, obviously, you have to be aware of what your relationship is with the person you're going to invite yourself to their home, to their celebration. And you have to know not to take it personally if they tell you no. I have to say, though, I don't think anybody's ever told me no. And I certainly always felt loved and welcomed and part of the scenario. So I just did it a bunch of different ways. I would call people and say, hey, I'm going to be alone for the holiday. I don't know if you have plans already, if you might want to put something together. Pause, hint, hint. And you'd be amazed what came back. When I first relocated back to Arizona, back to Scottsdale, I was actually at my mailbox and met a neighbor for the first time. This was right before Easter. And we got to talking about our lives and family and different things. And she found out that my husband was an airline pilot, and something came up with Easter. I mean, it played right into itself, but guess where I spent Easter that day? At their house. I mean, it was amazing. And I actually didn't even have to invite myself, but I've learned how to drop those little hints carefully. And I've also learned not to take it personally, if they don't pick up on the hint or they don't bite or whatever. It's totally fine. I get it. Sometimes people have customs and traditions that only involve certain things. And I don't know, maybe they didn't like me either. That's okay too. But I don't think so, because we've done lots of other things together. So I've learned not to take any of that personally. Now, one thing that I really took on is I learned to be the party starter. Now, as I already mentioned, it was Christmas, but I was going to be alone. I had children already, but my airline pilot husband was flying. And so I reached out to all the 13 people in my cul-de-sac, and 7 of them said yes. We had a big potluck. I kept it really relaxed. I made the main dish. So in this case, with Thanksgiving, if I were going to do that, I would be the one that would make the turkey and the gravy and probably the stuffing. I could delegate everything else out to someone if I wanted to. But I had to learn to be very relaxed about it, not to be super rigid. If you've watched my Decorating the Table series, you know that I really love, I can be a very informal person. I'm not snooty, hoity-toity, or any of that kind of stuff. But I do love a beautiful table and nice dishes and all that kind of thing for the holidays. It's just part of enriching the experience for me. Do I absolutely have to have it? No, not at all. But if I'm going to be the one hosting and planning, you can rest assured it's going to be done that way. However, when you do a potluck, I had to learn to release the white knuckles, right? Release the grip on and the control issue around having everything be laid out exactly as I wanted it. And I've had so many amazing experiences with that very thing. Sometimes there was plasticware and plastic spoons that broke, but I always had plenty of real spoons that we could dig into dishes with, whatever. Make it light, make it fun. At the end of it all, it's really about community, feeling involved, feeling loved, feeling gratitude, and everything that goes along with that. So if you're going to be the party starter, be willing to loosen the grip a little bit and just be relaxed and have a great time. Now, I mentioned planning your resources. Maybe you can plan an outing to a fancy Thanksgiving feast. Maybe there's others around you who aren't necessarily going to be alone for the holidays, but they don't love to cook. They don't love to cook that turkey and dressing. And I mean, let's face it, making the Thanksgiving feast is a lot of moving parts. I don't particularly find any piece of it difficult, but there's a lot of moving parts, especially when in that last 30 minutes when you're about to serve dinner. Mashed potatoes have to be done, gravy, carving the turkey, making it all come together so that you can have that Hallmark movie presentation, which most of us fall extremely short of anyway, but that's a whole nother story. Now, another thing that my family and I did one year, I try to think, my son was already moved out of the house and he was driving an ambulance. So he was working the holiday. My husband, my daughter, and I volunteered to serve at a shelter. We helped prepare the food, get everything ready, and it was a group of homeless kids who lived in the Redlands, California area. My husband had found this group and had volunteered for them. And that's how we spent our Thanksgiving. We went down and helped out with getting the dinner ready. We had a lot of beautiful donations from restaurants and grocery stores. We actually ate with the kids who were there. We passed out gift cards to them. And then afterwards, our little family of three went to the movies. And it was just truly one of the best Thanksgivings I've ever had. Now, I wasn't alone, and that I did have my husband and my daughter with me, but there was just that sense of doing something else for somebody else who was truly in need, uplifted my spirits. It made me so grateful for everything that I have in my life already. And I would do that again today if I were spending Thanksgiving alone. Now, maybe you can get involved with your church. Maybe your church does some outreach, or perhaps a church or your local synagogue, your mosque, whatever works for you. Maybe they are already putting together something for Thanksgiving, knowing that there are others who are going to be alone. So seek out what might be going on, or any other community network that you have. I know in the Phoenix, Scottsdale area, there are a lot of hiking, walking groups. And I have hiked Camelback, I've hiked Piestewa Peak, I've hiked a lot of different hikes on Thanksgiving morning, kind of that making your deposit before your withdrawal, doing the healthy thing, and then coming home and eating. But there are a lot of hiking, walking groups. And then for some of them, they may be going home alone. That's where perhaps you can already have a planned outing to go somewhere, because there are still a lot of restaurants. And I know here in Scottsdale, there are resorts and different facilities that serve Thanksgiving dinner. It can get a little pricey, so check around. Know some costs so that you can put it out not only to yourself for your own pocketbook, but for anyone else who might be joining you. And then if you're active in Facebook groups locally, and I really encourage you to do this, especially if you are currently in a lonely phase of your life, maybe it's not just the holiday, but you're uncoupled at this point or just alone, whatever it is. Join some local Facebook groups and find the ones that are active, that have coffees and lunches and happy hour and hiking and theater and different events like that. You can truly build some amazing friendships and community by just getting involved in Facebook and other areas where you can find those relationships. Now, it's kind of funny. 8 years ago, when I first moved back to Scottsdale, my daughter, where was she? I think she was study abroad. Was that it? Was she study abroad? I think she might have been. Whatever the case, she did not come home for Thanksgiving that year. She was still in college. My husband was flying that year, and I was all alone on Thanksgiving for the first time in my entire life of being 100% alone. And I absolutely loved it. I absolutely loved it. But again, I handled my emotions to begin with. I had decorated my home already, even though it was very quick, with a lot of white lights and my Halloween, my Thanksgiving decor, which I've already shown some of. And I was just starting to get set up for Christmas as well. So I had an outside Christmas tree set up and decorated just with the white lights. I had already cooked because I love cooking. I love Thanksgiving. I love turkey. I love everything that goes with it. So I had done a big feast and turkey, cooked everything ahead of time. I think my husband left on Wednesday. I think we had dinner on that Tuesday. So I had plenty of leftovers. And so I was really set to go. I was really set to go. I got up, I walked all by myself in the desert that morning. It was a beautiful Arizona desert morning, a fall desert morning. I played my favorite music. As I mentioned, I had started decorating for Christmas. Christmas. I had a little champagne toast, and I made my fabulous dinner from leftovers. I petted my dog. I only had one dog at that point. And then later that evening, I watched the sunset. And if you've ever been in the Arizona desert in the fall, winter, you know that we have gorgeous sunrises and sunsets. I watched the sunset, and as I sat there, I really sat in the silence and I reflected on all of the grateful memories that I have from the past. We can't control situations always, but we can control reactions and actions that we take then to resolve those issues of being alone, feeling anxious, all of the rest of that. And for my pilot wife group, I just want to say for sure, there are other pilot wives out there who are lonely and alone on the holiday season. So reach out if you haven't started a network of pilot wives. Find the Facebook groups, reach out through your husband, spouse, your significant other, and just ask, do you know who else might be flying? Is there any way you can help get me connected to some of these groups? But again, create that sense of community because it truly is everything. Make sure you watch the rest of the playlist, which is coming up on the Thanksgiving holidays. And please leave a comment for the rest of us with any tips that you may have. Do you ever find yourself on the struggle bus with relationships, career, or life in general? I'm a mindset and peak performance coach helping women rediscover their own sense of identity and purpose, avoid turbulence, and put their own oxygen mask on first. Together, we work to get you out of autopilot and create a better flight plan for life and relationship success. As a pilot wife for over 30 years, I've navigated thousands of miles and moments in aviation, mommyhood, business, and life in general. I would love to offer you a free call to see if I might be able to help you too. You can go to coach.pilotwifepodcast.com. And if you have a topic suggestion or a story to share on the show, go to ask.pilotwifepodcast.com. And of course, you'll find all of this at resources.pilotwifepodcast.com. Please take a moment to review and rate the show on whatever your favorite podcast app is. This helps the show get found by others who need what we have here. I'll see you on the journey, and thanks for listening.